Yeah, no, I spent the afternoon. This is day 2 or 3 of me spending the afternoon in the heat, just attacking the back fence and like killing plants. I have like a hacksaw out. I'm sawing like trees. I'm trying to get 2 more years out of my back fence. And so I'm sawing like the trees that are growing in there by hand. And I'm just attacking it in the heat. And I'm spending like an hour and a half to 2 hours every day doing it. And oh my God, I did like, I had a couple beers, passed out after my shower, and I am just waking up again to be a person. And
Sounds like the life. Doing some yard, doing some good, honest work, taking a nap, and then living the dream.
it's not bad. It's not bad. And
That's a good way to spend the holiday.
yeah, my buddy, it's for our listeners, it's currently Memorial Day. 2023, and I had a veteran buddy call me, and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "Oh, well, you're doing this because everyone, that was there with us, everyone who didn't make it home can't, and so you're living life really hard." And I'm like, "Yeah, you gotta."
You see Pete's cartoon for today?
He always sends them to me before he posts. Yeah, why don't you talk about it?
It was a cartoon. I can't tell if it was an old cartoon or if it's supposed to be like a future version of G.I. Lowe, because he's like it might be a future version because it's like an older, fatter, grayer haired
It's a future Lowe.
His character, and
It's
he's
veteran
he's got like a case of like a 6-pack of beer and some like neck beard or whatever. He's yelling at him, Memorial Day isn't about getting drunk with your buddies. And he says, depends on who your friends are. And then in the second panel, it shows Lowe standing in front of a military headstone with a bottle sitting on top of the headstone, and he's got a bottle held up, and he says, "This is what I miss you, brother."
Yeah. I think a human condition situation thing is where people like to find causes to replace any sort of personality that they lack. And so, like, some people, like, it's important to understand what Veteran Days or Veterans Day, Memorial Day is about and why it exists and all of that stuff. It's not unimportant, but also yelling at people for having a good time today is silly. And yelling at people for like not, I'm one of those people that, like, with all the military stuff, everything kind of worked out, Nick. Like, everything really worked out, and I'm okay. And most of the people I care about are still with us, and and I never came close to dying in Iraq, not really. And it's so what I do, like today, what I did was I spent all that time clearing the back fence, and I just kind of sat there and had a couple of beers and thought of my friends who aren't here anymore. I got a couple people I know.
Yeah.
One guy I think of a lot is a guy named John Nutt, and John, him and his wife adopted me, and they invited me over for spaghetti when we got back from Iraq. And John died, I want to say in Texas, and God, this was a long time ago. His funeral was 2012. John Nutt's funeral was, I think, because there was a third party. There was another guy that was in our company, and he was doing some time locked up for something, right? That guy who was locked up has since really turned his life around, has a wife, has a kid, has a family. He's doing great things. Mm-hmm. At the time, a lot of people we got back off deployment, and a lot of people self-destructed. And I'm not immune to self-destruction. My self-destruction just came late. And John, being the good guy that he was off to go see our friend that was locked up, because our friend had gotten himself into some trouble. And then he was on his way to see him, and then was in a car wreck, and then died on the side of the road. And there was a nice couple that saw the car wreck, and then just kind of stayed there with him as he died, you know. And so in 2012, we all went to John's funeral at a place called Gun Barrel City, Texas.
Yep, I've heard this story.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we got to see John's ex-wife, who was always really kind to all of us. And those two didn't work out, but a lot of people don't, and that's okay. And we got to see his daughter, and we got to meet his family. And every Memorial Day, I always think of John Nutt. And it took me a little bit longer than normal to remember his name today. Just because, you know, it's been over 10 years since he died. And, you know, and that's not, it's a little sad, but it's not like a bad thing, you know. It's, you know, John was a really important guy in my life for a brief period of time, and he died. And that should kind of be what Memorial Day is about, you know. And of course, like, if you know, were house to house in Baghdad and half your platoon died or something, then yeah, it means a lot to you, right? Like, your mileage varies based on your experience. But much to Pete's point with this cartoon, to you know, it's to yell at people for having a good time on a day off is silly. You know, like, you should have more of a personality outside of that. It's kind of like the people that, like, their whole identity is like far, you know, extreme politics, you know, or like, I'm super Christian, or I'm super Muslim, or whatever, you know, where you don't have a personality.
I'm super a-religious. That's also counts.
You're super atheist, you know, or one is like super atheist, and they're like yelling at people for, like, you know, saying Merry Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, not that they're like saying Merry Christmas to offend you, but it's just a nice thing that people say on December 25th.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about the same thing. It's yelling at someone for drinking with your buddies on Memorial Day is kind of like yelling at someone for saying Merry Christmas on the 25th or Happy Holidays on the 25th.
Yeah.
Like,
it's one of those things where, you know, really, if you get mad about either way, you're kind of an asshole. Because if someone wants to say Merry Christmas, let them say Merry Christmas. If they prefer to say Happy Holidays, let them say Happy Holidays. It doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts.
Exactly. It's a hi, I'm a human, and you should have a nice day. And
that's basically what it is. You're basically saying have a nice day. You're just saying it with, like, temporal specificity. Like, hey, this is the holiday season, or hey, this is Christmas Day. I'm putting a date on this particular, like, greeting.
Yeah, this one has more significance because most of us are off that day.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, sir, yeah, that's been my day so far. I've been, you know, this podcast makes sense because I'm still waking up and being a human.
Oh, you're fine.
So I have a fun poison ivy allergy,
mm-hmm.
and we actually spent a lot of money last year hiring people to come in and destroy all the poison ivy in my property. And so far, on day 3 of intense yard work, I have not felt the touch of the itch yet. So
yep.
I think that's just the best money I ever spent, let me tell you.
Yeah. My uncle got some exposure to poison ivy while he was working in his yard here. So
tell the audience where you are.
I am currently in Damascus, Maryland. I'm looking out my aunt and uncle's, like, upstairs, like, bedroom front window onto a cul-de-sac where they live. It's very nice. I mean, when I say nice, you have to understand I'm not saying nice like someone who's lived in fancy pants, rich houses. When I say nice, I mean like nice as in like it's cozy and quiet and peaceful. There's no crime, you know.
That's nice. Like
yeah, and there's like woods around, and you can hear birds singing. You know, it's like a very nice, cozy little place that you would want to live if you were, you know, able to. And yeah, it's. I think it's going to be a very relaxing summer for me.
What are you doing there?
I am here for my NASA internship at Goddard Space Flight Center, which starts for me tomorrow. I'm getting up at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning so I can get dressed, maybe have a bite to eat, and then I will be driving through hopefully not too bad DC traffic because it'll be still kind of early in the morning. I'll be driving in to Goddard Space Flight Center for my first day to do, whatever I need to do, because it's weird because the internship session technically doesn't start till next week. But I'm starting tomorrow because I have residency in Baltimore for my master's program coming up in July. So I'll be away for that, which means that they're letting me come a week early to sort of front load some extra work in, so I still get this full 10 weeks out of the program. I'm doing a science writing internship at NASA, which is, there's a couple different acronyms you can break out. There's the Office of STEM Engagement, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what I'm part of. And then I'm also part of the Office of Communications, which is kind of like, I think I was talking with one of my aunts earlier, not the aunt who lives here, but another aunt who lives in Michigan. I was talking with her on the phone today, and she put it. She said, "Oh, it's basically like PR." That's pretty much what it is. It's PR for NASA, because
I always tell people that what you do is you're the smart guy that interfaces with the brilliant guys to explain to us monkeys what's going on. You're the guy we send off to the university. Be like, how do you read, Nick? Go learn. Teach us how to read. Kind of.
Yeah. Kind of. I mean, that's kind of a heavy-handed way to put it, but it's effective. Basically, what I do is the bulk of my job as a science writer is I interview scientists and occasionally engineers and other folks working on projects, and I write. It's closer to journalism. There's technically two disciplines that are kind of intertwined. One of them is called science writing. One of them is called technical writing. Technical writing is more internal. It's more meant for people who are actually going to be within the organization. So if I was a technical writer, I would be writing manuals and technical documents to help other engineers and scientists figure out what the engineers and scientists that I'm working with are doing, so they can replicate it and follow that work. But science writing is more akin to journalism. What I'm doing is more akin to journalism. Basically, what I do is interview scientists and then draft out articles and then edit those articles and publish them as if I were a reporter on some newspaper science beat. Just in this case, my particular beat happens to be planetary science for Goddard Space Flight Center. So I'm writing about things like missions that are going to look for water on the moon, and probes that are going to land on Titan and fly around and take samples on Titan, and volcanoes on Venus and how they might have affected the climate there, things like that.
I'd heard that given the lack of atmosphere on the moon, we'd have a much harder time than people in science fiction would lead us to believe with having a colony there.
Oh yeah.
Given the radiation exposure.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing that basically everywhere but Earth is pretty hard with, because it's not really just the atmosphere. The atmosphere helps, but the biggest thing is the magnetic field. The moon doesn't have a magnetic field. Mars doesn't have a magnetic field. Fun fact for our listeners who may not know, the reason we get northern and southern lights is because of the magnetic field. Radiation from the sun gets caught in the magnetic field and gets sort of channeled down to the poles, where it creates these beautiful auroras. Well, when you don't have that magnetic field, those beautiful auroras actually turn into deadly UV rays and cosmic rays and things that can give you cancer and kill you.
Everybody.
Yes, so that's one of the reasons why. That's one of the many reasons why there aren't colonies on the moon or Mars yet. It's not as simple as just saying, obviously there's a whole level of difficulty just in trying to get there, but then also in trying to sustain life there when there's no atmosphere, no magnetic field, hard to get water, hard to get food, all these things. It's not as simple as just saying, hey, let's build a better rocket so we can get there in 2 months instead of 9. Even that wouldn't solve the problem, because once you're there, you've got to live.
So what if we just drill? Okay, so what if we drill deep under the surface? Would that help? Would that help?
It depends on where you are. See, one of the things we're finding out about the moon, for example, which is probably the first place we're going to colonize, quote unquote, put bases on the moon to sort of practice for going to Mars, to maybe mine for lunar materials, things like that. And there are plans to put bases there. NASA has plans to put bases on the moon. China now has plans to put bases on the moon, which will probably motivate America to do it faster, if we want to be honest. But on the moon, they're finding out more and more that really anywhere you go that has a little bit of shadow, there's bound to be water, or maybe there's water under the surface. And so, what you have to do is drill, but it's frozen solid, because this is space we're talking about, and there's no atmosphere. The thing about the moon, I think a lot of people don't understand, or might not understand as well, is the moon isn't just super cold, it's also super hot. Like when the astronauts were on the surface of the moon, when they were in the sun, because there's no atmosphere, the sunlight on the surface of the moon gets up to 150 degrees or something.
Well, fuck that.
Yeah. So, it'll go from 200 below zero in the dark to 150 degrees above zero, obviously, in light. And and that's it's like a quick transition, because again, there's no atmosphere to dissipate heat. So as soon as the terminator line, which is where the cut off between light and dark switches over, you see big time shift in temperature. And of course, it also doesn't change as fast as on Earth, because on the moon, the day-night cycle is 4 weeks long. So you get 2 weeks of light and 2 weeks of dark.
Hello, stranger. Do you like to read?
Read? What's happening? Am I dead?
I bet you like zombie books.
I like food. Do you have food?
You don't need food at dividedbyzerobooks.com. It's full of nutrient-rich science fiction.
Ugh, I'm stuck in an ad, aren't I?
Once I stop talking, reality will collapse until someone plays this ad again. This isn't the first time we've had this discussion, and it won't be the last. Hello, stranger. Do you like to read?
Tell me about your drive.
Yeah, the drive over from Indianapolis to Central Maryland was not bad, but I would be lying if I said it was fun, because yesterday I was sort of just hanging around here, obviously, and I was like, oh yeah, my shoulders really are sore, because I am very tense when I drive on the highway.
Oh my God.
a lot of it was probably when I was driving through West Virginia and Pennsylvania, going through the mountains. When you're winding through the mountains at 70 miles an hour and you're as anxious a driver as I am, you tend to clench the steering wheel, and it fucking hurts when you wake up the next day.
Do not blame you. I would. So you took the side of those mountains at 70 miles an hour, just hugging the damn thing?
Well, no, it's not what you're thinking. It's not like going through Tennessee or something. But you're still the highway still kind of winds sort of lazily through the mountains, because they don't want to just cut straight through all these mountain ridges. But yeah, it was a thing, but it was cool. I got to see a little slice of the country. I called you up and told you about how, when you cross into West Virginia over the whatever river it is right there that's on that northern panhandle of West Virginia, that little sliver that goes between Ohio and Pennsylvania there for a little ways. The first thing you see is a big billboard with a picture of a sad-looking man with a hard hat and coal dust on his face, and it says, "Don't let black lung steal your time."
Yeah, that's definitely a different part of the country right there, sir.
Yeah, and just the architecture, there were island were like island structures, like island buildings, like in the middle of the river, on these little slivers of land, and it was like something out of an old like movie. You know, there were like these mill buildings that are like these big blocky buildings with little tiny windows that are up on top of these hills on these islands in the middle of this big old river. And it's like, yeah, I recognize this. This is like something you see in an old like 40s movie, an old New Hollywood movie or something. Like how this is like something out of the Deer Hunter.
Yeah, like you look at these buildings, you're like, oh, these like they were probably company towns.
Yeah.
For coal mines and different things and mills and whatever. And how like the old coal mines and the mills, they would just build these towns and they'd bring a bunch of people in to work them.
Mm-hmm. And then the mines and the mills shut down and the people didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, you gotta get creative after that.
Yep.
No, something made me think of that. I'm at the VA hospital a few weeks back, and they have like a little canteen in the hospital. It's ran by the PX company, and it's and this little thing is like you can buy. It's a little convenience store they have in most hospitals, and I saw a thing on there that said, oh, you can only run up $1,000, like employees of this, like basically employees of the company could only run up $1,000 tab while shopping at the store. And I'm like, oh, they sell their soul to the company store. It's like the song. It's like the coal miners 100 years ago. Oh no, that's horrible. I laugh because it's really sad and dystopic. But like you're gonna have, it would be like if you worked at a gas station and they said, oh yeah, you can run up a tab here up as much as you want, and then we'll just take that tab directly out of your paycheck. It's feudalism, man.
Yeah, basically, it's feudalism with a couple more steps involved.
Yeah, I
think that's how some comedian literally referred to it once. It's feudalism with a couple more steps involved.
Exactly. I don't. It's like I got no shade against people that are just getting by. It's nothing against them, but like putting those situations when created with the sole intent of capturing people and limiting their options. If you are in debt to your employer and you have to work off that debt, and part of that debt is used to purchase consumable goods that you survive with, that's feudalism, man. Yeah. That's a fucked up situation and system to set up. Like, you should pay people well enough that they don't have to shop at your fucking store. They go anywhere they want.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'll get out my fucking socialist hat for a second.
Well,
maybe I'm not socialist, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, if we're being perfectly honest, there's plenty of things to criticize about both sides of the system, and that's one of the things to criticize about capitalism.
That's true.
Plenty of things to criticize about capitalism. I can find things to criticize about the other systems as well. But one of the things to criticize about the capitalist system is that it tends to lean towards exploitation, because it's basically just, hey, I have, it's the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. As Mr. T would say.
That's true. For our listeners, I'm eating dinner right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what you eating? I saw you eating a burger.
It's just burger and fries. From
where?
There's a place called 317 Burger. And they deliver bison burgers and sweet potato fries. So they're like,
oh man, bison burgers?
Oh yeah, it's the fucking best, dude. It's the leanest meat. Right, there's a couple of herds of bison that are commercial around in Indianapolis that people will, they'll sell locally, and so you get bison meat, and it's like sustainably produced and stuff because they want to sell more bisons. So they're gonna like keep these. It's like if you have a cow herd, you're not gonna kill all the cows.
No.
So,
what's like? I tell you, while I was in New York, I went to I can't remember what the place is called now, but I went to a burger place in Harlem. And had an Impossible Burger for the first time.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. I mean, if I really wanted to pick it apart and like put on my like Gordon Ramsay hat, I could probably find like things to criticize. Looking back on it, I can't remember it being any different from any other burger experience I've had. I mean, it probably depends on where you go, like wherever you're sourcing your quote unquote impossible meat from. But the Impossible Burger I had at this particular restaurant in Harlem was no different from any regular burger I've had. And that's not me selling them. Obviously, I haven't told anyone the name of the restaurant, so I'm not like trying to pitch them. I'm not a pitch man for Impossible Meat. Let's give that caveat right now. Hey, Impossible Company, if you want to give us some money to sell your stuff, I'm sure Derwin would be happy with that.
I will sell out to anybody with $1. Don't even worry about that, sir.
Yes, we are not pitch men. I'm just saying. This friggin' meat, it tasted like burger. It tasted like, real hamburger, and it was good. And it was a little more expensive, but it's New York, so the food's a little more expensive anyway. So, I wanted my friends, I think all three of my friends who I was there with are vegetarian at least, if not vegans. So I was just trying to be part of the crowd, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Manhattan's not cheap.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a thing with a lot of big cities, there's so many, and again, we can criticize it, but when it comes right down to it, a lot of it really just comes from demand. It's the old supply and demand thing, when you've got a city of 8 million people living on a couple of small islands, the fact trying to get food to all of them is going to be a little more expensive, and then that cost will pass down to those people. That's not really a blessing of the system, but it is a feature of the system.
Just keeping everyone fed and not like eating each other is a fucking miracle.
Yeah, I was joking about Soylent Green with my aunt here in Maryland today, and how she said, it's funny how there's a health supplement company that calls their product Soylent, and it's like, do they not realize what they're talking about, or are they just that frigging irony happy? Because like the phrase Soylent Green is people has entered the lexicon. It's not even a spoiler anymore. Like, it's like I am your father. Everyone knows that quote, even if they don't know what it's from.
I'll be honest. If I made a vegan food company to substitute real plant-based substitute foods, I 1,000% will call it Soylent Green. Like 1,000%, no issues. I would have Soylent red, orange, and yellow, and then green.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just good marketing.
Yeah.
Like, that's good branding. That's what that is. Whoever did that's a fucking genius. Like, I'm just upset that I didn't call our book company Soylent Green Publishing or something. I don't know.
Yep. You got to jump on those marketing trends. You got to jump on those marketing opportunities when you can, because they will get snatched up. Or get snatched up like these specialty, what am I trying to say? We get snatched up like the specialty kits in military shooter video games.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So what are your expectations for this upcoming, your first week at NASA in person? I don't know. I have nothing to go on. I mean, all I had to go on is what I've done virtually so far. So I'm assuming there's going to be meetings, and there's probably going to be interviews and stuff like that. But I really don't know. And I'm really just excited to see what they have in store for me, because obviously, one thing my aunt actually might, again, the aunt here in Maryland pointed out that I'm going to be there working a week before most of the other people. So I'll be able to show myself off a week before most of the other interns are there, which is kind of a benefit in and of itself. And it also means that I might get a little more exclusive time with some of the mentors and possibly like people to interview and work with. So hopefully this week will just be full of me, like sort of being shown around the different labs and like, work areas and getting to know people, sort of setting the groundwork for what the next 9 weeks are going to be like. Listen, if someone's like, hey there, Oaks, so the asteroid's coming, just blink 3 times.
Derwin, I think I've told you this, so I'm going to tell you again. If there was an asteroid coming, you would probably know before me. I am just an intern. I am just an intern. The news would probably be filtered to me through like a third round of meeting. You would probably know via the social media shitstorm that happened as soon as the news was broken. Because I don't really look at news at all. If you watch any news at all, you probably see more news than I do.
I avoid most of it. It's kind of like I say, oh, what's the stock market doing? Because I'm an adult and have 401k, and I'm like, how's that going right now? Oh, terrible. Cool. I'll check back in on it next year.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, and this is not financial advice, I know that, like, typically if you hold positions in the market for decades, again, not financial advice, you will traditionally see growth. Mm-hmm. But you have to, like, hold safe, secure positions for decades. So that's why, like, I don't really pay a whole lot of attention. I just kind of check and I see, what do I own? How's the market? Cool. And then that's it.
Yep. Just leave it be. Let it accrue.
There's very little reason to, like, listen to, like, what the politicians are saying or what's going on there, because most of that's just, like, nonsense.
It's all bullshit because none of it affects them, and they're just trying to stir up shit so that they can get a return on their investment, which is totally different from our investment because they're playing with totally different money than we are.
Basically.
Which is me up on my soapbox.
So
it's like the old Chris Rock joke about the difference between rich and wealthy.
Yeah.
The joke goes that the black NBA player is who has millions of dollars in his bank account is rich, but the white corporate businessman who owns the team and signs his checks is wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. So,
I like to think that wealth gives you kind of your time,
mm-hmm.
and wealth is kind of a state of mind almost, and wealth means you've got, like, really good balance.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it doesn't have to be $1 bajillion, but it can be like, oh, I have a house and the house is nice and I have a good job and I can order takeout and it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I can pay the power bill, it's not a big deal. And maybe we just live in such a dystopic world that I'm like, oh, middle class, that's wealthy, right? Or maybe I just grew up fucking dirt poor. I don't know.
You're good. I mean, there's different types of everything of wealth. There's wealth that I think the average person understands, and then there's wealth that's like generational wealth, where like you're talking about like Waltons or Warren Buffett or people like that type of wealth, where it's like, oh, this is wealth that the average person can never understand because it's so far beyond their level of comprehension that it would never be approachable. It's like, what was the old, I can't remember the old thing. It was like something that made the rounds on Facebook several years back, and one of the times when people were like crying about Jeff Bezos, as you should. They were saying, think of it this way. Jeff Bezos could spend some exorbitant amount of money every day for the next 50 years, up till the day he dies, and he would still be the richest man on earth.
His ex-wife
Mm-hmm.
gives away so much that she gives away huge sums of money, but she still has so much money. She has more than when she started. That's the fun part of compound interest. And hey, I want to get there too, man. Like, listen. Now that doesn't mean like you don't take care of people, but also like if you can take care of people and get that level of wealth, that sounds. Yeah, that's like, oh, your family will be well settled for generations. That sounds great. So you read the Europa Goodbye chapter 6 that I've been working on.
Yes, I did. I don't think I read the whole thing. I read the part that you had worked on up until your party the other night, and I went home and went to bed because I had to get up and pack my car and
of course
go the next day. But
what are your thoughts there?
I like what you're working on, because for the benefit of our listeners, Derwin has been sort of incorporating some of his characters and ideas into a sort of I don't know if hybrid is the right word, but it's kind of like taking a character that he's worked on in several of his stories and incorporating into one of my stories as sort of a cameo.
I started something. I created a character named Winston Carmichael.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in 2007 was his first appearance, and I named him because his full name used to be Winston Durrell Carmichael, because I was smoking Winston cigarettes and Durrell cigarettes, and Carmichael was a girl I knew in the Army. I say girl, we're probably both about 20, and she would ask me for like advice on stuff, and then it's simple stuff like like what just like simple interpersonal things. And I just kind of said, oh well, this is like basic morality stuff, like like don't do that, just how to be a good person, whatever. Nothing super complicated. And and at the end of the course we were at, she gave me this whole big bag of nickels, because she said that she always talked to me like I was her therapist, like in the Charlie Brown TV show. And so the first version Winston Carmichael appeared in was called Carmichael's Nickel, because I had like this little paper towel that said Carmichael's Nickel on it, and I thought, oh, that's a cool book, like that should be the name of a book. And then I kind of wrote a character in a whole book series around that. And long story short, Winston Carmichael gets involved in kind of a multiverse scenario, and then that turns into the Infinite Winston saga, where there's different Winston Carmichaels across the many different timelines of the multiverse. And I was working on chapter 6, and for our listeners, over the last couple episodes we recorded, we've talked about chapter 6 and about how through no fault of your own, I was reading your first draft, and I thought, oh well, I see what he's going for, but this is a more grounded, more how it would go in real life military situation.
More nuance to it than I could bring to the table.
More nuance, and you didn't live the life, so you wouldn't have the nuance. That just makes sense. Like, that's no shade or nothing. That's what I bring to this partnership, is a whole lot of nuance. And I took Winston Carmichael and kind of made him the squad leader. And then he was kind of just this guy that's like, oh, I'm probably going to die today. And I actually kill him at the end.
You kill him at the end of that chapter?
I kill him at the end of the chapter. Because, I'll spoil the fuck out of it here, because I mean, who knows where the rewrites will go. But as of this draft, they jump out of the airplane thing, because basically I wrote Winston getting Yuchenko and Darius Moroni to get up and running, because they're going to be a 3-man insertion team for this like aerial drop or orbital drop. And so I wrote all of the scene of Winston getting his team ready and saying, hey guys, are you up? Are we good? I don't know if you saw this, but there is a part where Moroni's scared. And I based this off another situation. Moroni says to Winston, hey man, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not any good at this. And Winston's like, well, how many times have you done this? And Darius Moroni says, well, 0. And Winston says, well, of course you don't know what you're doing. You've never done this before. That would be silly if you did. And that's based off a real life situation I had where I was a sergeant, and this brand new medic came out to me and said, Sergeant Lester, I'm a terrible medic. And my response is, thank you for having the trust to tell me that. I appreciate that. Don't say that to anybody ever, except for me. You can talk to me about it. For God's sake, don't tell anybody else that thought ever, because if you break the spell and they realize the new dog has no confidence in himself, your half of your job is instilling confidence in others as a medic. And if you don't have confidence in yourself, they're going to put you in the back of a truck and tell you to take a nap, because they'll have no confidence in you. And so I told the kid said, Sergeant Lester, I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, well, how many patients have you treated? And the kid said, like 12. And I'm like, well, of course you don't know what you're doing. You've been a medic for 5 minutes. like you'll treat 12 people in a morning at a morning sick call in a battalion aid station. Like, of course, like, dude. And so I got to see him like blossom and become like this really cool guy. And so I kind of pulled from that experience to put that for Winston. And then they get ready. And then the perspective shifts to Darius, which is basically me taking the best bits of that chapter you wrote and then just kind of condensing it and then making it to where it's just the three of them on the fall team, right? And then they get down. And we talked about having Winston talk somebody down at one point.
Yep.
But then I thought, nah, because I kind of had this other thing I already had in mind or already wrote where they get down there. And as Darius's suit drops him down, this mine goes off and he blows off to the side of the wall. But then he's like, oh my God, all my fucking extremities work. And then this kid, Yuchenko, is freaking out because you've got Darius, who's a private first class, Yuchenko's a specialist, and Winston's an E5. And so when they got to the ground, Yuchenko had landed directly on a trip mine, on a pressure plate, right? Mm-hmm. And you'll make all of this make sense within the lore if any of it's out of the lore. And Winston walks up, puts his foot on the pressure plate, and says, "Hey Chen, it's your squad now. You got this, kid." And he pokes up Chen and just throws him as the mine goes off. And so that's the rewrite I had. But much of the orbital insertion is all from Darius's perspective, because I'm like, oh well, this is all fantastic, and you only really need these three characters unless we need more. We can add more in the future if we need to. But what are your thoughts there, sir?
I like it. There's as far as like adding other characters to the drop, the only reason the drop might be bigger is because it comes in waves, and they're dropping like a couple platoons at a time, and they drop them in waves, so they're not all just sort of, soaring through the air at once like a bunch of hailstones bouncing into each other and running into anti-aircraft fire and all that stuff. But as far as like the actual like plot that you got cooking up, that's pretty much what I would have done. I mean, taking the sort of the drama of Darius sort of having his first drop and compounding that with the drama of Darius facing the loss of his first squad leader. So this is basically his first time in a combat zone, and oops, his squad leader is now dead. And if anything, what I would do,
please,
I might do when I go to doctorate and give it my TLC, I might have it, instead of being like a mine, it might be like he gets shot by some like enemies who are waiting for them in the rocks, and they shoot the other, like Yurchenko, who's been in combat, kills the two enemies or whatever, and Darius and Yurchenko are there with Winston as he dies, because that's kind of the effect that it had. That's kind of what I was looking for, is where it has an effect on Darius, because he's like, oh, this is the first time you dealt with death. It's like again, you'll get this reference. It's like Wrath of Khan. You never face death. Darius has never faced death yet. He's never faced death like this. So that's so it's not only that he's facing the fear of going into combat, he's facing the literal specter of mortality rearing its face, because it's like this person who's basically sort of been his parental figure in a way, as he's like taken this plunge into his first experience of combat, and now that figure's being plucked away immediately, sort of like Ben Kenobi or Gandalf or whatever.
That's kind of what I was going for. I don't know if you read this version of it, where like I spent a couple of pages just establishing Winston, establishing Yurchenko, establishing the suits, establishing like how they're short on supplies, how the suits have a survivability percentage, how Yurchenko's was they're so short on supplies that they won't repair anybody's suit that's over 51% survivability. And so Winston talks to his girlfriend and pulls in all the favors he can and tries to get it to where fucking just take care of his people. And so I look forward to your rewrite, sir.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and hold on. Let me pause real quick. No, I was thinking, how do you feel about transitioning from Stargate and starting the Expanse?
That could work.
Because I've never seen it, so we won't do an episode review this week, but next week we can start with season 1, episode 1 of the Expanse.
Yeah.
And we can do that for a while. And if we get tired of that, we can go back to Stargate, or we can do Battlestar, or we can do something,
Because I think I've got access to Amazon, because I know my aunt and uncle here in Maryland have Roku, which is what my dad and I use back home in Indy, Westfield, whatever. And even if they don't have a subscription to Amazon Prime, I should be able to get access to mine, because at least for the time being, Amazon Prime is not as much of a stickler as Netflix is. So I should be able to access Amazon Prime and watch whatever we want to watch. At least Stargate and then Expanse, because obviously Expanse is on Amazon.
Yeah.
So
and not that I'm not enjoying Stargate, but we've done Stargate for, I don't know.
We've done it for a few months and we both see it. There's nothing again, not to denigrate Stargate at all. There's nothing really new there for us. The only thing that's new there is kind of going over it with a critical eye. Looking at the Expanse, it'll be your first time, and after the first season, it'll be my first time. I've only seen the first 2 seasons. So
there you go. That's cool.
And being able to look at it with one of us having seen all of these episodes for the first time, and really I haven't watched at least the first season in a few years.
Sure.
So it would be kind of a new experience.
Sure.
So that'd be a good one.
We will definitely have to do that. I have to hop off actually a little bit early today, because
that's fine.
I have a friend who is a mutual friend of Pete Barlow's.
Mm-hmm.
And he is from North Dakota, and he's driving through Indianapolis on his way to Pennsylvania to see some family. And we've never met in person, and I'm not exactly sure what he looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on his podcast a bunch of times. I've talked to him for hours. Don't really know what he looks like, so it's a weird part of the thing. But I'm trying to find a way to link up with him in a place for his dogs to kind of, stretch their legs a bit.
Yep.
So yeah, I feel good about where Europa Goodbye is going. I'm glad that, and I didn't think you would be, but you're very open to a page 1 rewrite of a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of collaboration on your part is commendable, because not everybody is. Some people, if you play with the toys too much, they get a little sticky.
Yeah.
But you being open to me saying, hey, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but here's a way where it might, and then here's the ball back to you, and then you play with the ball and you make it make sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot of people are that open to collaboration, or at least maybe you and me are just at that perfect juncture where it works for both of us.
Well, I think you could probably confirm this. Even a couple of years ago, I might not have been at that space, and I'll be honest. There's a part of me, I can sense this part of me that's like sort of rebelling against it. It was sort of rebelling against it when we talked about it, but there's a bigger part of me that said, well, no, it's kind of like that I don't know if you've seen that meme where it's like, I think from Kingdom Hearts, where it's like Woody, Woody from Toy Story going like this, holding his arm out, like stopping the player character from doing something, like saying, no, let's wait and see what happens. It's like, that's what my what my waking mind is doing to my subconscious and saying, no, let's see what he's got. I trust you. I trust your judgment. We work together. I'm not just gonna poo-poo your idea. If it turns out that's a crazy idea, we can fix it.
And I'm you being open to criticism, to constructive criticism, to especially from someone who knows the world a bit, shows a real level of maturity. And you having that voice in the back of your head saying, hey, motherfucker, that makes sense too. That's a very human response. But you telling that voice, it's okay, don't worry about it, that's a mature response. That's a sign of maturity, sir. And I think we can end there. So for the Blanket Fortress Solitude, I am Derwin.
I am Nick.
And we will see you next Monday morning at 0700.
Yep.
How do you feel about that, sir?
Feel good.
Very cool. I look forward to an update. I want you to just enjoy this fucking adventure you're on, which is so cool. And I'm so happy for you that you're on this adventure, and use this podcast as a diary. All of the things you're allowed to talk about. And then be like, oh, we did this and this and this and this and this and this. So that 5 years from now, you can look back whenever you're like, oh, what the fuck how was that first weekend in Goddard? Like, oh, you got it on tape. But anyway, I gotta bounce.
Just saying.
Go have fun. Thank you so much for coming to my party.
Yeah,
absolutely. Already. And I'm so glad that you followed your dreams and rode off into the sunset, sir.
Yeah.
But I will talk to you soon. We'll have to do voice calls and stuff throughout the week.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, sir.
Take care, man. Have a good night.
It was exactly 1 month after I got to Iraq. Passed the PT test today. Not by a whole lot. Always a proud moment with every milestone I have. The things I've seen, the hijinks that ensue.
I can't believe it. All of the toilet paper's gone.